Hello, this is Vijay Rana and you are watching Rajneeti Live. Boris Johnson has fulfilled his life's ambition. He has got the position he always wanted and aspired for, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Deal or no deal, he wants Brexit to happen by the 31st October this year. His opponents are already threatening to place a motion of no confidence in his government, and political observers say that he may not last very long. The question arises, are we heading towards a new general election, or do we have the possibility of a new referendum? To discuss these issues, we have Seema Malhotra with us, the MP for Feltham and Heston. Seema, we were all expecting it, isn't it? Boris Johnson to be the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Well, I think it was the best kept secret that he would be likely to be Prime Minister. And he took over this week. I think already we can see that he is going to preside over a government in chaos. A government where so many of the talent and the experienced members of Parliament who are in senior positions have stepped down to try and stop what could come in his wake. I understand people being attracted to him because of his rhetoric and his speech and his eloquence, but behind that is not a man with a plan. If you were a man or a person with a plan, you would know what the risks of no deal Brexit are, and you wouldn't put anybody through that. No self-respecting doctor would put somebody through an amputation without anaesthetic unless they were in some war zone.
Yeah. We'll discuss
these these are the big issues now that we are facing. Okay. What happens now, and how do we handle the next few months?
Well, we'll discuss these issues in the program, but the question arises, why there was such a lack of strong opposition to Boris Johnson? There's a lot of skepticism, people are not happy with him, and yet he had a walkover. Why?
Well, within the Tory party, it's actually very clear why, because what's happened over the last 2 years is that members who were members of the Leave campaign have been encouraged to join the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party has seen a reduction in its membership. So you have only about 40,000 people who are electing the new leader. Now, if you've recruited 30 or 40,000 people to that, then it's very easy to take over the membership and to push that party further to the right. And this is why even members of the Conservative Party who have been members of Parliament are saying that the party has been captured, and it's been captured by people who haven't had anything to do with the Tory party before, but who have gone in, made it so that the leader is a more right-wing leader, and that's how he has been elected. It's been a long time planning.
Now, coming to we'll discuss the politics later on, but something very interesting has happened, and there's a lot of buzz within the Asian community. The two topmost positions in the government are now held by people of Asian origin. How do you react to that?
Look, I think it's a very positive thing to have diversity. Look, we've seen Sajid Javid as well. He was, in his role as Home Secretary, I think really took some important issues on board, whether it was TOEIC and those accused of not passing their English language test. Many Asians affected by that, and in my own constituency as well. And he was somebody looking like he was taking it quite seriously. I think as well we'll see what this brings, because even if, whatever your background, whether you're Asian, you are here as a British politician and you have to make decisions in the interest of the country. And I think people will be concerned that there will be interest made in the interest of Boris Johnson or the interest of the Tory party. So whilst I applaud, I'm delighted, in fact, that we have Asians at the top of our politics, I think the responsibility will be to make sure that everybody is brought along in the country, that they do not seek to defend when a Prime Minister who has been racist in his comments, and that is well known, whatever he does, they have a responsibility to stand up to anything further that comes from Boris Johnson, and to make sure that he genuinely takes diversity and fairness at the heart of what he does.
There's been a lot of criticism of Preeti Patel's elevation to the position of Home Secretary. What do you think, is jealousy, or she's not up to the task? How do you assess?
I think these
disappointment?
matters have to be on people's competence and also on their track record. She had a position, obviously, as International Development Secretary, a position that she had to leave. I think people will be looking to her to show that she has integrity in that role, that she is working in the interests of the whole country. It isn't just about Brexit. These are people's lives, and some of the most amount of our casework comes on immigration issues. So she has a great responsibility. She has, I'm sure, been given that job because she's capable of doing it, and that's what we want to see. Everybody who's in a ministerial position, whether they are Tory or they are Labour, have a responsibility to serve the country and not their party, and that's what I think everybody will be looking for.
Traditionally, Labour has been the party of Asian community for decades in this country. And if there's a future Labour government, or if Jeremy Corbyn, will he be able to match this record of Asian representation? Do you see yourself as the future Home Secretary?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I did serve in Jeremy's shadow cabinet, and you look at the diversity in his shadow cabinet as well now. I have been in the Commons many times when I have looked across at the front bench, and it has been almost all white men on the front bench. Now, whatever one or two you may have, the question is what's going to be the story of this government, not just in terms of who may be sitting on the front bench. What decisions are going to be made in the interests of equality? What decisions are going to be made in fairness for women? What decisions are going to be made that are fair to ethnic minorities? And I think people will watch very closely, because the record has not been strong either of Theresa May or of David Cameron or of Boris Johnson on these matters. Boris Johnson, who described people as flag-waving piccaninnies from the Commonwealth, and other, really quite racist comments. Everybody was up in arms about this, about Muslim women. This is not a way in which you can seek to run a country. It may be how you try and divide and rule to get votes, but people deserve and want better from their politicians in this country. We don't want to be populist. We want to be in the interests of people, and from a humane perspective that we run our politics. So there is a high bar now for Boris and his government to reach. They haven't done that well so far, but we need that in the interest of our country.
Yeah, he's promising a lot, and let's wait and watch what he does. Coming to Brexit, he says that he will quit Europe on the 31st of October. If he leaves without a deal, first of all, can Britain leave? Will Parliament let him do that?
Boris Johnson has had a track record from his early days as a journalist for being exuberant in his language. He made his mark as a politician who exaggerated some of the stories in Europe as an EU correspondent, and that has travelled with him through his career. So there are people who look at the facts, who see Boris being a storyteller, an exaggerator as well, taking one thing and turning it into something much bigger than it is.
He's a journalist.
Look, it's a tabloid form of journalism.
Yeah.
And if you're running our country, people will actually want there to be some responsibility that goes with that. The most irresponsible thing he could seek to do is to have a no-deal Brexit. True, I understand, as someone of his wealth, someone of his background, most of his cabinet now privately educated, how will Brexit hurt them? This is part of the theatre of private school debating clubs. This is where he's learned his trade. But these are real people's lives, people who want to know if they're staying here and they're from the European Union, who've been working here, paying their taxes as doctors, as nurses, as business people for many years. Will they have the same rights? Not just will they be able to live here, will they have the same rights as they have now? Will their children who are growing up here have the same rights as they had when they were born? Will British people living in European countries have the same rights? What will happen to the European health insurance card? I had a member of my constituency email me today saying she can't even get onto the government website to renew hers. Now, if there is a way in which the government is turning down the services to people, doing it through the back door, separating from those who have and have not, or who are entitled to rights or who are not, without being clear with the British people and with those who are rightly living, fairly living in this country, I think people want a better politics, not a divided politics. So I don't think the trust level is high, and also the polls have shown that today.
And how a no-deal Brexit will impact the businesses? Could you spell out?
No deal is very serious. I describe it as like an amputation without anaesthetic, because if you imagine, you have many businesses, even in our own Asian community, they trade with many European countries. They can trade with them in Poland or France or Germany as if they were trading between Hounslow and Hull. You know, the parts to build our cars, or the, even tables and chairs that we may import as furniture or export from our country. Many of those things, or even our education, the freedom to, go and learn or to study, and how we, young people, many to go to other countries to study, and can do so and build a life of experience as well. Now, those issues in terms of investment as well, billions invested in our country from through the European Union, the European Investment Bank and other means, people's rights as well under the free movement legislation. So our ability as businesses to sell goods, to buy parts, to sell parts, for somebody maybe in your family or even in my family have been used to being able to fly and go and work in Germany or France without any visa issues or any issues about their rights. Their safety as well. They have rights as European Union citizens across the world. They have extended rights. So all of these matters. What will your healthcare rights be? What happens if you're stranded? How will you fly home? If you're subject to crime, how will anyone who's perpetrated that crime be able to be arrested if they flee to another country if we don't have the same rights under the European arrest warrant as a country? So not only will we lose those bases of our security, of our stability, of food standards, of rights to education, of research and investment in our universities, we will put all of that at risk, as well as our influence as a nation and the trust that other nations have in us. So the consequences will be very far-reaching. Boris won't be able to kiss and make up with European countries afterwards. This isn't a divorce where you can go back and say, I'm sorry. This will be something that will affect our reputation for generations to come.
A lot of our Asian businessmen, they run small and medium businesses. Will they be particularly hurt?
Many small businesses where they may be just trading locally may not feel the same effects. But in my discussions with the CBI, with the Federation of Small Businesses, look, there are many small businesses that actually are exporting. They may be small businesses, and 80% of our business in the UK, but they may be exporting even basics like, maybe making the energy efficient light bulbs. Asian businesses I know doing that. And they can only grow their business by growing their export market. Now, the failure of our exports and not growing those is not to do with Brexit. It is to do with what the government hasn't done, because I've been following this for years. And so our small businesses that may rely maybe on one contract with Germany or one contract with customers in France or in Spain, they could well be hit very hard, because the door may be closed because it is so much more uncertain, or that there has to be an extra tariff on the goods that are exported from Britain. So if you put barriers to trade, you will make it less competitive for new businesses starting, for our young people to start their businesses. If you have the equivalent person in Germany to maybe you have growing up here of Asian background, the person in Germany will be able to trade freely with 27 other countries. The young man or woman growing up and starting from London or from Birmingham, then may well have barriers. That isn't going to help them.
Now, a businessman friend of mine put it very simply. He said, no businessman wants his market to shrink. Now, the question arises then, how come, especially even in the Midlands, a lot of traditional Labour supporters voted to leave?
I don't think Labour supporters or Tory supporters who voted to leave were told the full truth. That's my view. Tell the full truth, explain why there may be barriers, explain how our system of how our economy works, with supply chains that are now integrated across many countries. Explain how even in Ireland and between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, to make one bottle of Bailey's, Irish whiskey, is milk can go or cream can go from over the borders 4 times. And that's because they've got used to working as if they're going from Hounslow to Southall. And when you put the board in any form, whether that is through electronic means, in whichever form, you are going to create a barrier to what is now done freely. And I don't think people were explained this, is my view. And so I hope that there will be a way that things don't go so badly wrong that people say, how did you not tell us this? And then become angry with politicians, particularly those who call the Leave campaign. You promised us things were going to be better. Now what we have is actually worse. This, I think, is a real danger, particularly if we see no deal.
We have discussed the problems of no deal so far, and what's the way ahead. We'll discuss them after the break. So it's time for a break. Don't go away.
Tired of always running out of data? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With Leica Mobile's UK Plan Ultra, you get a phone-busting 15 gigabytes of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £12 for 30 days. That's a limited time offer of over 50% off when bought online with a new SIM order. That's big data and big value. Visit leicamobile.co.uk today to see the full offer. Terms and conditions apply.
हेस्टन हाइड वेस्ट लंदन के सबसे शानदार होटल्स में से एक with 303 air conditioned rooms and suites, one of the largest banquet spaces in London, meeting room for up to 1200 people, conferences, musical function, weddings या कोई भी गैदरिंग, मनपसंद भोजन, शानदार आयोजन और बेहतरीन वेन्यू, 400 गाड़ियों की पार्किंग के साथ Heston Hyde. For bookings, call 0208 572 1818.
इंडिया हैज द सेकंड हाईएस्ट चाइल्डहुड ब्लाइंडनेस इन द वर्ल्ड. इसे 90% तक रोका जा सकता है. गुजरात में देव दया ने ये बीड़ा उठाया है. सपोर्टेड बाय रोटरी एंड लायंस क्लब ऑफ एनफील्ड, देव दया प्रोवाइड्स 100% फ्री मेडिकल एंड सर्जिकल आई केयर विद zero admin cost. We can provide eye care from £1 and cataract surgery from £10 to help children's sight. Please donate generously. Visit devdaya.org.uk or call 07768 311 855.
जय माता दी बोल पवन जय माता दी बोल पवन वरदान वाले मोती सगारे तू नीनु गया फुलारे तू चलो पवन वरदान वाले जय माता दी बोल पवन वरदान वाले.
Welcome back. This is Vijay Rana from Rajneeti Live, and with me today is Seema Malhotra, MP for Feltham and Heston, and we are discussing the formation of new government in Britain, as well as the problems of Brexit. Seema, what does Asian community particularly feel about the new government and the roadmap they have unfolded?
I have been talking to people, obviously, in the constituency, and generally people are feeling pessimistic about Boris Johnson. They don't trust Boris, and this is shown also in the polls of the whole country, majority not feeling trust in him. They understand he is very good in his language and in his speaking, but what's behind that, and what is he going to deliver? Especially as he is somebody who has supported all the cuts over the last 10 years. He has been in the governments as well that have been putting those cuts to our education, cuts also to our prison service, and we saw the real issues just this week. I was in the chamber talking about the issues at Feltham Young Offenders Institute, cuts in our communities, to our community services and our local government. His track record is not one of investing in our communities. So I think people are worried, and they are right to be worried.
But now he's saying that we will have this windfall of £36 billion, and he wants to put more policemen on the streets and control the crime and invest in communities and give more funding to the councils. Do you believe him?
Boris is very clever at saying what he knows people care about. And he's actually taken those all from what Labour's saying, because he wants to win Labour votes. So what he says is not going to be the same as what he does if you look at his track record. Now the Tories, how many police officers did they cut? They've cut 21,000. How many does he say he wants to have? Another 20,000. Simply, it's not even fully reversing the cuts that he has brought in. And why is he doing this? Because he knows one of the biggest issues in our community now is crime and antisocial behaviour. You know, Labour has also uncovered the statistics that show that crime has also been rising a lot. And this was also looked at by the Home Affairs Select Committee last year. As well as seeing where the drop in policing has been, we've seen the rise in crime. Alongside that, you can track the rise in violent crime.
Which a lot of stabbings are happening.
And then you track the number of violent assaults that have led to people going into hospital. So you look at the hospital data, alongside the crime data, alongside the police cuts data. This is the true story of the Conservative government. So I'm very, kind of not surprised, I would say, at Boris coming in and trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, saying, I will solve these problems, but without taking his responsibility for creating them. And if he wants to take his responsibility for creating them, that would be the first step in people believing what he's got to say.
And he's also saying that my record as mayor of London was pretty good as far as stopping or reducing the crime was concerned. Can he, first of all, was that record true, or can he repeat that success if it was a success?
That record, in the way that he's describing it, no, I don't think it was true. And I think many people are, there was crime that was falling nationally, and then crime that has been rising also now nationally. But crime fell under the Labour government as well. And I think this is where it's important to see what was the legacy of the Labour government and then what has been the legacy of the Tory government. Because sometimes it takes 3-4 years as well to things to filter through in our system. But Boris has a big responsibility because people are afraid on their streets. They do see rising drugs and drug crime. They do see rising incidents of violence. And in my own community, where we've been holding public meetings, where I'm working closely with the council, working closely with the police and the community safety boards, we're working in each area with the residents. What will make you feel safer? And how do we help work with the police to channel the resources we do have into that? But the police that were very experienced, those jobs were lost. Now we have recruited more, but they are new into the job and it will take some years for them to build experience. There's a lot of work to do now to correct the mistakes that the Tories have made and the damage that it's also done.
Well, you paint a very kind of depressing scenario, but if you listen to Boris Johnson, this is the golden age. This is United Kingdom is going to be the best place on this earth. So where the reality lies, the golden age of Boris Johnson or the increasing crime and declining economy.
One thing I always remember is how it felt at the time of the Olympics. Now the Olympics was won. Remember how it was in our country? It was like a national celebration.
Yeah.
We were the top of the world. And we won the Olympics because we were proud of our diversity. We showed that to the world. We had Tessa Jowell, who's now passed away, Tony Blair, Ken Livingstone, all part of how we won the Olympics. Now Boris was mayor at the time, but the hard work had already been done also some years before. There has been many golden ages in Britain. It isn't a golden age just because now we have somebody with blonde hair as Prime Minister. This is, however Boris wants to describe it, Britain has had golden ages and it did so much better. The austerity and the pain of the decisions that this Tory government has made has led, everybody knows, to a rise in insecurity, a rise in fear, a rise in not having the sense of safety in your community. These are not new. These are from the cuts that the Tories have brought. So I do hope he's going to reverse some of those cuts. But he isn't going to do it by, in a sense, saying that it's all gained from the European Union. The amount of money that we've given to the European Union overall is part of being a club for which you get benefits. You get benefits that have meant it's easy for your business to trade. easy for you to travel without visa or cost or hassle, easy for you to get healthcare if you do. All of those things are benefits to our quality of life and to the opportunities for our young people. Of course, you take all those away, and if it's worth 36 billion, which is less than half of our education, more than half of our education budget, or maybe it's worth £200 per person per year, that's the loss that we are going to have. And Boris has to be clear about the loss. It isn't free money that we're getting back. We're losing our rights. We're losing opportunity.
Coming to your Labour Party, why it has not been able to take advantage of the shambles that Conservatives are in?
That's a very good question, and it's one that we have discussed this week in the Labour Party again, in fact. Look, we do need to do much better, and I think our leadership does need to do better, and I think our leadership knows that, because we did well in the last general election. When we go out to the country with a message about our vision for the country, it's been really positively received, because I think people do trust the Labour Party. When the Labour Party says it wants to reform our communities, our health service, our education system, give opportunities, people believe that because we are authentic and we have track record in that. But I do think that both the way we campaign for these things in Parliament and now the way we are running our party has to be much better.
But there's a lot of skepticism towards Jeremy Corbyn and his leadership. What would you say about that?
Yes, there is skepticism. I think the polls also show that. And Jeremy can do extremely well as well. And I think he's got to show that he's doing better in the current climate. I think he's got to show that he's now going to lead the way on leading through the Brexit crisis. I think we need to be stronger about calling for a second referendum, which Jeremy has also given his support to. And the reason why is because it's time to bring the people and the country back into the debate about our future.
So could you explain to me that what Labour Party intends to do in the coming months? What is the alternative vision to Boris Johnson's?
So the Labour Party, I am proud to have been part of over the last few years in the Brexit debate in Parliament, because we are a party that has said, look, we did support Remain. If we are to leave, it should be in a way that has the least damage to our economy, to our rights as citizens, to rights for workers as well, and least damage to our environmental laws and legislation. Things like the environment, you can't legislate for nation by nation. Either all of you are going to take part in reducing climate impact or improving our air quality or making sure our beaches are safe. All of these things have to be done through cooperation. And Boris is not a man who is known for cooperation. So people do look to the Labour Party and they do look to Jeremy to be leading on these areas. And indeed, on the arguments we've made in Parliament, he has been strong. Now, with a new Prime Minister, a new way in which he's going to campaign, we have to step up our game again. And that's what I can see us doing over the next 2 months in the run-up to our party conference. We're in campaigning mode because there'll be a general election any time. But we also have to be clear with people that there will be a Brexit, there'll be a referendum on any form of Brexit. In my view, the Labour Party should also have a reform agenda. If we are to remain, how do we deal with the issues of immigration and other areas that people voted on? There has to be some gain from all of this, even if at the end of it, we are to stay within the European Union.
As as it is generally seen, the Labour Party did not take full advantage of the situation. And Lib Dems have covered a lot of ground in last, a few months. How do you see the new leader there, Jo Swinson?
Jo Swinson, I have a lot of respect for. Who wouldn't? She's a very strong and feisty woman in Parliament, someone I've worked with on a number of cross-party areas as well. I think it's so easy, however, for the Liberal Democrats in some ways. Look, they don't have many members of Parliament. They can really say whatever they would like to say. But they have had some consistency in supporting Remain. And many in the Labour Party have also had that consistency. The truth is that it won't be the Liberal Democrats that deliver a better deal in Parliament or a referendum where people can have a say and even leave supporting members of Parliament, support the idea of a referendum. because it at least will close the question in the country about the fairness of the first referendum too. So it will only be with Labour leading this and Labour votes and Conservatives actually also agreeing in sufficient numbers that we will get this through. We need to work with the Liberal Democrats on this, but I think Jo Swinson also has her own record to really defend on how she supported many of the cuts while she was in the government with the Conservatives and what the consequences of those cuts have been.
Well, it's really mind-boggling, the British politics now. It's in complete flux. Have you ever known such times before?
It is in flux, and we have to adapt as politicians. You know, I'm a British Labour politician. I was born in Hounslow. I represent my constituency in Hounslow. I have Asian heritage, and I recognise the importance of that in helping connect our politics with the Asian and other minority communities, but also part of how we keep our link strong between nations where we have diaspora communities in Britain. And I think that experience has also enabled me to be much more flexible in who I can work with on different issues. So some of the work I've done in Parliament led from my constituency in issues. Recently, I've chaired the all-party parliamentary group on mortgage prisoners, people who are stuck because of decisions the government has made to sell off people's mortgages on the cheap when they took them over when Northern Rock collapsed. And those people have lost their rights. They've been stuck on high interest rates. They then are subject to losing their homes, and then they can lose their jobs. You know, these are the issues that have faced hundreds of thousands of families. So I have set up and I chair an all-party parliamentary group on that has responded to some of our regulations, now has met with the minister 2 weeks ago, and I work cross-party on that. So I think that my experience and also the fluctuating nature of politics has forced us to say, if we are to change things for our constituents, then we may have to work across our parties as well. And we are doing that in many areas, not just in Brexit. People who are in the Conservatives, disillusioned with the Conservatives, I'm working with on other areas, including health and education funding. Education funding in our constituency and in Hounslow, with those in special needs, and many of our Asian community, maybe those with special needs or language needs. Over 2,000 young people in Hounslow need extra help because they have special needs. That's up more than double in the previous 5 years. And that's a real question for welfare of our families as well. So these are serious matters in which we are working with our schools and representing their case to the ministers, getting meetings with the ministers and arguing for that support. So this has to be done in many ways cross-party, because when it comes to the budget, it's going to be Tory and Labour who will be calling for these areas of funding. You
raise very important issues. In fact, if you see the world situation, the world environment, new technology, unemployment, and there's a lot of resentment among the youth all over the world. Now, I was in Banaras, BHU, Banaras Hindu University, and discussing this with some of the professors of political science. And they said something very interesting, that there's something new is happening in last decade, where the people's verdict could be influenced by this social media and internet. And it is happening across, Obama took full advantage of it, then Trump took advantage of it, Modi in India did it. So do you think the democratic will of people can now be shaped through these artificial instruments?
Social media is very influential and important, and it is a way in which your message can reach very quickly. It isn't social media itself that's the issue, it's how effective the message is and how agile it is as being sent around. The issue that is important is regulation, and I've been part of a commission in the last 2 years, a commission actually on the future of referendums, but it did look at what happened in the last referendum, and there are very simple basic things that need to change. When you get a message on social media, maybe your WhatsApp, you don't know actually where it's come from.
Exactly.
And if you don't know who's written that message, who is influencing you, and how is that going to change things? Many of the questions now are around Russian influence, Russian artificial fake accounts, putting out tweets, retweeting them, trying to get people to believe things that have actually been proven to be false, and the accounts to be false. Now, when British people might stand there and say, how on earth is it possible that my vote was influenced by fake accounts from people in Russia? The truth is that has happened. Not across the board, but it has happened. So the regulation needs to be tighter. On every piece of information on social media, it should be clear who has sent it and who has written it. Then people can have some more discerning way of knowing what they're being influenced to believe and who by. And at the moment, there isn't tight enough regulation, which is why there is much by way of populism. And I worry that people are being influenced in good faith, but not being told the truth about who is telling them to do what.
It's time for a short break, and we'll come back. Don't go away.
Tired of always running out of data? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With Leica Mobile's UK Plan Ultra, you get a phone-busting 15 gigabytes of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £12 for 30 days. That's a limited time offer of over 50% off when bought online with a new SIM order. That's big data and big value. Visit leicamobile.co.uk today to see the full offer. Terms and conditions apply.
हेस्टन हाइड वेस्ट लंदन के सबसे शानदार होटल्स में से एक with 303 air conditioned rooms and suites, one of the largest banquet spaces in London, meeting room for up to 1200 people, conferences, musical function, weddings या कोई भी गैदरिंग, मनपसंद भोजन, शानदार आयोजन और बेहतरीन वेन्यू, 400 गाड़ियों की पार्किंग के साथ Heston Hyde. For bookings, call 0208 572 1818.
इंडिया हैज द सेकंड हाईएस्ट चाइल्डहुड ब्लाइंडनेस इन द वर्ल्ड. इसे 90% तक रोका जा सकता है. गुजरात में देव दया ने ये बीड़ा उठाया है. सपोर्टेड बाय रोटरी एंड लायंस क्लब ऑफ एनफील्ड, देव दया provides 100% free medical and surgical eye care with zero admin cost. We can provide eye care from £1 and cataract surgery from £10 to help children's sight. Please donate generously. Visit devdaya.org.uk or call 07768 311 855.
जय माता दी बोल पवन जय माता दी बोल पवन वरदान वाले तीर्थ लगाने तू जीनु में बुलाने तू पवन वरदान वाले जय माता दी बोल पवन
You're watching Rajneeti Live, and this is Vijay Rana. I'm talking to my guest, Seema Malhotra, MP for Feltham and Heston. Seema, are we heading inevitably, because Boris Johnson has started with a sort of confrontation with the European Union. Michel Barnier is not very happy about his speech. Do you think we are heading for another confrontation with the European Union, and Boris Johnson, the only option before him is just to leave everything as it is, and there's hardly any possibility of a deal with Europe?
Boris is a man who since his childhood just liked competition and just liked to win. So it isn't clear to me, even after his speech today, what he really wants for the country and how that is consistent with the man that we've known for many years. I think Boris wants to simply be the top, wherever that is. So I don't think he's really thought about Europe in this way, about really being true allies in the future. Look, even when it came to the Iranian oil tanker crisis recently, it was working with our European allies is going to be a much better response on our security and our safety. And Boris has now set a tone of confrontation. He isn't trying to speak to Europe. He's trying to speak to his members of his Conservative Party. That's the thing to understand. When he makes a speech, who is he talking to? He's talking to members of the Conservative Party and to the newspapers that he wants to write in and to see sell. So any responsible Prime Minister has got to look long term as well as short term. What will our relationship be with our European allies and partners in 10 years' time? If there's a security threat from Russia or maybe some issue with China, who will be standing with us and how will they be our closest neighbours? If there are terrorist attacks being coordinated across Europe, how much will our police and security services genuinely be involved and have access to the same data? Will our citizens be as safe as citizens in other countries? You know, these are matters that should occupy Boris and keep him awake. If he thinks that it's impressive to simply be ridiculing others in the European Union, that isn't the way in which the foundations of our nation will be strong in the future. And that's where I think people will start to see through
and this
the
is
stage
really,
that he's on.
And this is really surprising that you have been partners in Europe for many decades, and then suddenly such a bad blood, and you don't go out to negotiate with somebody with a sword in your hand. So, and this is the same mistake which Theresa May did. So what's the way ahead? You know, are we heading towards a general election?
Well, I have optimism in our country. I genuinely believe that we have a vast majority in this country that recognise the importance of being a good neighbour, leading in the world through better behaviour, not childish and, you know, throw your toys out with the pram behaviour. Look, what Boris is playing out is what he learned at Eton. It's the kind of debate and attitude that you have in, you know, public school debating clubs. And that's what we have to understand. He is on a stage and he is operating like he's on a stage. He is not operating, in my view, like a true Prime Minister, because a Prime Minister should have the respect of others and should not be seen to be playing some sort of game. So my concern is that the European partners that we have, our friends, our family members, those who are family members of many people in our country, or the history of immigration that we have as well, that they should know that Boris doesn't represent everybody's attitude. Boris represents Boris, and that there are people across the United Kingdom, represented by many other members of Parliament, including Conservatives, who recognise the history we have together. We fought in a war together. We fought against each other. We created peace. We were examples of peace across the world. We rebuilt our nations together after years, and we were devastated by that too. We founded institutions like the United Nations and like our NHS, and we formed great institutions that have been the bedrock of some of our economic development as well. Now, if we think that we can just go it alone in a world that's very complex, where you need to have your friends to stand with you, then Britain will be all the poorer for this. Not because I don't believe in global Britain, but because I believe that we have been more global than ever before. And the Olympics was a true example of what global Britain was. We were influential. Everybody wanted to be part of us. We had friends across the world. We were leaders across the world. We had the fastest growing economy in the G7. It's dropped to the slowest growing. So Boris can say what he likes, but he's saying it on a stage while he stands with ruins behind him.
So Europe is beyond his reach, the nation is not fully behind him, and his own party is not supporting him fully. And as one Scottish MP said, welcome to the last Prime Minister of United Kingdom. Do you think there is a serious possibility of Scotland leaving the United Kingdom?
I'm a member of a group called the Constitution Reform Group, and it's been led by people in the Commons, in the Lords, and many others who are very
We have only 40 seconds to finish
about the future of our union. Anything could be at risk if Boris gets it wrong. He cannot play politics with our country's future, and that is something that he should learn now that he is Prime Minister.
On this note, we finish our program today. Seema Malhotra, thank you very much indeed for being with us, and thank you everyone.
आज की इस दुनिया में अगर आपको लगता है कि आप पीछे छूट गए हैं और आपको समझ नहीं आ रहा कि इसके पीछे कारण क्या है, तो आइए और बात करिए मेरे साथ प्रोग्राम जन्म कुंडली में दोपहर 12 बजे हर फ्राइडे, और मैं दूंगा आपके सवालों के जवाब जन्म कुंडली के माध्यम से प्रोग्राम जन्म कुंडली में।